I would like to get started by sharing my screen. And today I will be talking about new product development. But before we start talking about new product development, I would like to talk about PackPack. So PackPack is not that complicated. Essentially, you just need to go and post a question. So it's one question a week and 2 responses. I was speaking with the people from PackPack today, and we have noticed that for the past 3 weeks, there's been a reduction. There was about 90% of the people that participated till pretty much the spring break. And since the spring break, we've had a reduction to now about 65%. So people have less participated. What we found is that the people that were participating the most are still posting as much as before. It's the people that didn't post so much that are posting even less. So I recommend that you go post. I picked for today, I think, an interesting question and a comment that someone made. How can you find the right brand? And this is from Sharifa Edward Gill, where she was talking about the fact that brands are very important because they build this relationship between the company and the consumers. In this case, the brand Zoom that we are all using now is becoming very, very important. In fact, I've been using Zoom for the past 5 years. I was one of, if not the person that was complaining that nobody was using Zoom at CSUN. So I've been complaining for many years, and I couldn't get even my department to do Zoom meetings. I started doing Zoom with the students. Pretty much all the Zoom meeting that I did prior to this, not in 2019, but before 2019, I rarely had anyone that actually was able to use Zoom. And I was telling them, let's go use Zoom to have a meeting. I mean, in 2016, in 2017, and everyone was telling me, what is Zoom? I don't know what is Zoom. And they always confused Zoom with some other company. And so I'm not surprised that this information is just coming out now, because the Zoom that we all know can be confused with so many things. Their domain name is not great. I think it's zoom.tv or something like this. So it looks like a small startup. And now obviously it's a very successful and growing company. So when you pick a name, you have to be very careful because you can be always confused. And so since a name is there, and this is something we discussed the last time, is something for people to make a quick decision. If they confuse it with something else, then you may actually help benefit some other company. So should Zoom have been spelled Zoom the way we know it, or should they have spelled it a different way? That way they would have been more unique. Maybe they could have done this, but at the end, coming up with a name is not that easy. Having a name that you can use, that everything is available, such as having access to trademark in your own country, having access to trademark in other countries, having all available social media and domain name. It's becoming more and more complicated because there's different laws international as well. And so there's some country where you can buy trademarks and not use them. And it's a little bit like buying, getting social media username. You know, nobody's asking you to be the owner of the trademark for the username that you're using, and you can actually go and get as many as you can, and that sort of blocks businesses that have legitimate use of those names. That is a business. There's many cases of people who did this for .com companies, and eventually they had to change the law where they made the .com to be used by the company that owned the trademark, or the one that was first using it for business. And so having a good name that people remember, that is easy to memorize, is very important. Having a good name that is available to use is another issue. And having a name that sort of is connected to what you're doing is good, but that's not always the case. I mean, think about Google, for example. Now we know when someone says, Google this, what it means, but there was a time where people had no idea what Google means. I remember I was using Alta Vista like everyone else. You were either using Netscape, Alta Vista, or Yahoo, and then came Google, and I was among the first people, I think, to use it. and I was telling people to use Google, and they didn't think it was very serious. I was one of the first user also of an email called Hotmail. And I remember I was telling people, why don't you send me an email? Why don't you get an email? It's free. Use Hotmail. And people were thinking that Hotmail was something that had to do with sex or whatever, when Hotmail was just a name that was used by the people that started this company. So finding a name, being able to use it, making people remember it, that's the job of the marketer. But the other job of the marketer is to survive in an environment which is changing. And since the environment is changing, it's getting rid of a lot of people in the process, because they have to face a new environment, and this new environment may be hostile to them, and it may be actually helping some other people who are more fit for this environment. So in business, to survive, you need to be adaptable. You need to learn to adapt. The best way to adapt, I think there's 3 tools. One is to innovate. So you have to look at those changes and find the best adaptation in order to survive in those changes. You have to think about the concept of related to the consumers, is who are the consumers, and part of this adaptation is to follow closely the consumers. The consumers may be changing, and that's what you have to adapt. And then you adapt to them. You have to sort of reinvent yourself, in the sense that whatever you were doing in the past may not make sense anymore. So you have to think about being a company is not being someone and something that is successful at doing one thing. Is success is by doing what people want. So innovation is not based on what you want to innovate, but what people are looking for to improve. So you find where there are gaps, you find what could be changed. A big issue when people start innovating is they think as an engineer, and they think about what is the perfection. Another problem is they think about what competitors are not doing, when in fact, innovation is not trying to do something competitors don't do. Innovation is doing something that would improve what consumers are looking for. So that's the two, a very important factor. And then there's another one, which is sell yourself. So to survive is you have to constantly learn about how to sell yourself, how to change the message, change the characteristics that you are putting forward that are making you different. And therefore, there is a concept which is looking at the consumers, and there's a concept looking at what you are good at or what you are weak at. Change your weaknesses into strengths, put forward your strengths, make sure that your strengths are strengths that are connected with what the consumer wants. And then this is when you become successful at developing your company. Now I'm adding another element of how you keep being a successful company, is I think you never should underestimate the concept of market research. I know market research for a lot of people, it's sort of appears as boring. It's something that one wonder if it's really necessary to do. But I think what is important about market research is your belief that data is important. Your belief that you need data in order to make better decisions. So it's not so much that you like to do market research. It's not so much that you are very academic in doing it. It's that you want to make the best decision. And to make the best decision is you care and respect data. So looking at data is you look at existing data, you look at creating data. Creating data can be in itself a very a creative way, and you have to be innovative sometimes in creating data. You have to look at different type of data and come up with an interpretation of the data that helps you make better decisions. So making decisions without looking at data is very dangerous. Being just data driven for the sake of creating data is very time consuming, and it may make you as someone who procrastinates because you're mostly collecting data and you never do anything. So you have to be a doer, and you have to be a planner, and you have to use data with much respect. And being a doer comes to this last point that I want to make today, is you have to have leadership. Leadership is extremely important. Leadership is someone who has convictions, is someone that looks at data, is someone who is predicting before other people. And so I think the world that we live in right now, because of this coronavirus, really shows the importance of leadership. is at the end of the day, I remember when I was learning English, I remember this is like in the early 90s, I was in England, and I was working with American people, and they were talking about this concept about the buck stops here. And I was like, what, the buck stops here? What the heck does that mean? Like, I didn't understand. And they were talking about this concept that you have to take charge. And once you take charge, it's all on your shoulder, and someone needs to do something. And so there's no perfect world, there's no perfect decision. There is someone that has to find the best decision. And this is what we see. I see in the world right now, there's a big debate on some old drug that's been using for 71 years that is called chloroquine, hydrochloroquine, and which is essentially very helpful with the coronavirus. But it's very helpful if you take it very, very early. If you take it too late, it doesn't do anything. So there's a big debate, mostly in Europe, not so much in the US, of people saying you should not take it, and some other people say you should take it. And at the end of the day, the doctors are saying that it's okay to take it, but you have to let the doctor prescribe it, and people should not take it over the counter and then abuse it because there's no more for the people that need. And then if they take it too early, for no reason, they could actually get sick. And so what the government has done is they've actually stopped doctors prescribing it, which is creating a big problem because the government says don't prescribe it and the doctor says prescribe it. Leadership is this, is someone has to come and tell the people that this is a drug, therefore it's dangerous, therefore there could be people dying, but at the same time, since that's the best thing that anyone knows at this time, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than letting people die. Leadership, someone has to make a decision. Leadership is, we see it at the level of our governments, where in the US, where someone has to make a decision, and the leader at the end of the day keeps going up and up and up to the president, and everyone is looking at this person to make decision. It's never going to be perfect, but if they don't make decision, that's also a sort of a danger. So in business, if you are the owner, the buck is on you. You have to make decisions, and you have to look at the situation as never going to be perfect. You have to embrace failures, because this is the only way you can move forward, by realizing that you may make 10 good decisions and 9 bad decisions, and hopefully the balance of those 10 made you move forward. Hopefully you would want something better than 90% of the time correct. Is you would want 10% above correct, but you would want to be more correct than that. You would want to collect data in order to make better decisions. So leadership is someone's job. Part of the leadership is defining strategies. So there's many more strategies than 4 strategies, but I go back to these 4 strategies saying, now that we know that we have to create something, that we have to make decisions, what decision do we take? We take the decision to do the same thing. So this is market penetration. We take the decision to sell to new people. In a way, that's an innovation. We used to sell to one group, now we sell to another group. Or we take the decision to make a new product. So what's a new product? So this concept of new product is someone has to therefore create a product that is new for the market. Now, there's all kinds of variation of newness. Newness from removing something, from adding something, from giving something for the consumers, for making the product work easier, for helping people use the product in a new ways. There are many things that can be brought as new. Making something that is 100% new, so unique. It's so unique that it's a breakthrough. That is very, very difficult. So here I bring back the concept of just noticeable difference, which is, what do you make that is new? If it's too new, people are not going to embrace it. So it needs to be new, just enough new that it's perceived as new, and that this, what is perceived as being new, the whatever just noticeable difference, is therefore sufficient for people to want to get it. So not new enough, people are not going to want it. Too new, people may be scared. It may be something too much of a niche product. even being a niche product may be what you want. So let's say you're going to create the next design of costumes for Halloween. What would you do? What new trend do you see? What would be the new design? So every industry is subject to having to create innovation. If you're working for the fashion industry, it's 3 times, 2 times, 4 times a year. If you're working for the sugar industry, it's every 20 years. But yet there are change, and the biggest change in your environment comes from the micro environment, and from the micro environment, the biggest change usually comes from the consumer. So let's look at this lady. Sarah Blakely came with an idea that was something that she did for herself. And so she wanted to create a woman underwear that would be helping with her silhouette. And so she didn't know much about the business of women underwear. She decided that it would be great to make it herself because she didn't have much means, and she found very quickly that her leadership came from doing it yourself and not waiting for anyone. And so she decided to start sewing this underwear. So she designed the underwear, she sewed the underwear, she was the marketer, she was the accountant, she was doing everything. She was not very successful, and then she realized that she had to learn about the process of manufacturing a product, and there she went into making this product and making appointments with distributors. Very soon, she was successful with this because she was able to have a meeting with Neiman Marcus, and she got there at the right time, having a meeting with a buyer, and eventually the buyer made a $500,000 purchase, and then $1 million purchase. And so she quickly figured a way to start producing the product. And so she started with this business called Spanx. This was in early 2012, and she was very successful with Neiman Marcus. And then she started developing different design of this underwear. And she started learning about—
Yeah, that wasn't funny.
She was developing some different products, and she adapted the different underwear to different desire from the ladies. And then she went further by looking at the market and creating some underwear for the men as well. So she eventually got copied, she got competitors. In the process, she became a multi-billionaire, and she won several times Best Woman Entrepreneur in the United States. So obviously, there's a big advantage in being innovator, because you are the one that start developing the relationship with a group of customers. You may become the brand associated with the category. So in our situation, when we talk about Zoom, originally the brand that was the most associated with this category of video conferencing was Skype, and Skype is still very famous, but we can see that this dominating position is probably changing. So being the first is helpful, but you have to defend this position. And then what you do oftentimes is you do what's called locking up necessary resources. So this is a concept that is a little complicated, that I talked about before when I talked about trade leverage from the brand loyalty perspective. Brand loyalty is the highest level of brand equity, and brand loyalty means that people like your brand, people recommend your brand, and as people recommend your brand, you have a fan base. So you have a group of customers that buy and buy and buy again because they really care for that brand. They believe in that brand, they believe in your mission, they believe in your leadership bringing quality product, and then they tell their friends and they tell anyone, they try to influence other people to buy this product. By doing this, you are able to better control the distribution, because the distribution will want to buy your product or in order to distribute it, because they will know that there's enough people that care for this product that it's going to be easier for the product to be sold. And so that's what locking up the distribution means, is once you start being an innovator, you innovate, the distributors will pick the innovators. They will tend to favor innovators. But in that situation, there's a lot of distributors that are very worried about picking the innovators as well. But being an innovator, well, you will get more traction than not being an innovator when you are an unknown brand. So innovating helps you to gain traction through distributors, because distributors, not all of them, but many of them care for brands that are being creative and making new products. But you don't benefit from existing marketing efforts. You just don't. Because these marketing efforts, you're gonna have to do them. People don't know this product category, people don't know this brand, and therefore you'll have to, okay, so
Professor, you want to pick that up?
no, I just turn it off, no worries. So now I want to show you this, and if you, I'll give you a few seconds to look at them and tell me what they are. They all belong to the same thing. So it's not like one is one thing and another one is another. They all are something.
They're opportunities.
Exactly. They are all opportunities. So when you run a business, not every business should become a multi-billion-dollar business. I think what you should do when you run a business is not run after money, or not run after being having big market share and dominating the world. I think when you have a business, what you should run after is being happy yourself in running this business, and being happy to help other people become happy with the satisfaction that they're gaining the product. So it can be any scales. But I think when you run a business, being for profit or non-profit, what you should go for is some growth. Is you want your business to grow 1%, 1,000%, it doesn't matter. But you don't want to be exactly the same, or you don't want to decrease your business. So to gain growth, what is it that you need in order to gain growth? Is you need to identify opportunities. So opportunities are very important, and therefore opportunities will help you grow. Opportunities generate different strategies. Some opportunities may be more strategic, some opportunities may be more tactical, some opportunities may be more about a new type of customers that just generates the strategy of market development. Some other opportunities may be to collaborate with another company or go into a new market, a new state, a new country. Some other opportunities may be some changes in the market that you can take advantage of to create a new product. So this is the concept of new product development. So you buy another company, you buy a patent, you buy a license, or you just go into a franchise business from another company. Maybe this product is totally new to the world. This product may be just an existing product with some improvement, and it's just this small improvement, just noticeable difference. Remember, a small improvement is okay as long as it's perceived as being sufficient to make the product look better. So the problem with new product development is that it is necessary to continuously innovate. So innovating without having to make something new, innovating to be perceived as just noticeably better is necessary. Different type of innovation. There is some that are just small innovations and it keeps your product being better. And there's some disruptive innovation because you're using a technology and you're making something totally different. Disruptive innovation are not necessary. Disruptive innovation, it's let's say 1-2% of the time. 98% of the time is incremental innovation. So why do people fail with their business? Because they're focusing on one target and there's multiple targets being created and they miss that. Because there's just some change in the society. There's a change inside the economy. I mean, I'm faced this with my own business where in fact, the month of February was my biggest month ever in the past 12 years, was one of my business. And the month of March was the worst month in the past 12 years. And it's probably going to keep going down for my business as the time goes until the economic recovery comes back. So there's some changes that make you fail, some that you have control, some that you don't have. Maybe because you have spent too much time and too much money and too many resources in order to develop this new product that this cost you too much, and you didn't have the cash flow, or you didn't anticipate some expenses and you run out of money. Maybe the product failed because you launched that at the time where it was just poor timing. The product failed because it had a shorter PLC. So PLC, we'll talk about it. I will define what it is, and it is very important, is the product life cycle. So products are sort of like people. They go through a birth, a growth, and a death, if you want. And so some products have a long PLC, and some products have a short PLC. The shorter the life of a product, the more you need to make money quickly, or you need to have a high margins in order to cover for this short life cycle. And so depending on how you anticipated this, it will have positive or negative impact. There's also the issue related to having a multiple ownership or having multiple intermediaries in this business. Is sometimes you depend on everyone to do their job, and maybe there is a lack of support that you're getting. In my situation, I have many different intermediaries. You go from the intermediary of the people that are farmers, to people that are taking care of the shipping, to people that are taking care of the warehousing, and all of these people that depend on them doing their job. And if one of them doesn't do their job, at the end, my product doesn't get to the end of the customers. So I need everyone to do their job all the time. And that's why it's sort of a lot of balls to manage, and things that are moving at the same time. And it requires a lot of organization and a lot of constant communication and making sure everyone does what they're supposed to. So an innovation will succeed based on, number one, how better is that innovation compared to the existing product? So if it's trivial, it's very small, it's insignificant, people are not going to go out of their way to purchase it because it's too small, the difference between the existing product and the new product that you've made. If it's not compatible, which means that they have to change their belief, their behavior, there's a lot of learning curve, big learning curve in order to use it. Therefore, that makes it more difficult. It's not impossible that it will succeed, but it's less likely that it would succeed. Complexity is, it's much better to have a product, a new product that is an innovation that is as easy to use, and people actually just feel the innovation, but their behavior is exactly the same. So it's like you're making a new braking system, and this braking system is called ABS. And then when people drive their car, there's the car before that had no ABS, and then there's a new car that's ABS. People don't have to do anything different. They just press on the same pedal, but now the car brakes better because it has ABS. So compatibility, it's easy. Complexity, it's easy too because there's no change. Divisibility is when you create an innovation and you add this innovation to the product. So this is for the product that are not disruptive. Like I was saying, disruptive products are a small percentage. The majority are products that are just an incremental innovation. Can you extract the element of innovation? Not everything is in innovation. There's a J&D, the just noticeable difference. What is it that you've done to this service or to this product or to this ID that now makes it better, and that you can talk about those elements that are different and makes it better? Is it the speed? There's a difference of speed. Everything else is the same, but it's quicker. And therefore you can talk about the difference. It used to be this speed and now it's that speed, and that speed is what you will gain. Communicability is related to everything else. Is it something that people can try? Is it something that people can see? Is it something that people can hear? And therefore you make it easier for people to understand what is it that they're gaining from this innovation. When you talk about innovation, you talk about different people caring for innovation. So the concept behind those people caring for innovation is about the fact that there's a specific group of people that care more for innovation. So the first group is the people that are usually have a higher income. So higher income people and more educated people usually tend to care more for innovation. Then there could be another factor, which is age. Younger people tend to care more for innovation, but it's not if you're young that you care more. It also depends on the category, and this brings another type of people caring for innovation is people that really care for that category. So you may have someone that buys products when they have been used by everyone else. So they're not seeking innovation for the sake of innovation, but they are just looking for innovation in cameras, photographic cameras, for example. They buy always the most recent and newest type of camera, but for everything else, they kind of wait. And that's another group. So who are the innovators? Innovators are the people that really care for a specific product and will buy the newest one, or people who have a higher income, more educated and younger, more sophisticated people. So the innovators are the first group. I won't ask you specifically the percentage of each one of those groups because this is a ballpark number. But here I will ask you which one is the first, the second, third, fourth, and so forth. So what is very important within the innovators is the fact that they will be the first group of people that will start buying the product, and they will play a role of influencers. So you don't make products to sell to the influencers. You make products so that influencers are starting to buy the product, and then they influence the rest of the people. So the most important category is not the influencers. The most important category are the early adopters. If you have a successful product with the early adopters, it's almost certain that you will have a successful product, period. Almost. Having all the innovators that buy a product, that doesn't make your business successful. It's the early adopters that would catch on those innovators. But the early adopters are people that are not innovators. Therefore, they will not start things. They are just the people that are the first to jump on the bandwagon and create the snowball effect, the spillover effect that creates the mass movement for everyone else to start buying. So that is what is really, really important. The early adopters are the most important, I believe, because that's the movement that would create the early majority and the late majority, which makes here, at least from the bell curve, which makes this 70% of the population. To make 70% is you really need the early adopters. So if you want, the innovators are like a spark. The early adopters are this fire that starts. And I guess that analogy is kind of sad, but for everyone to understand. And then the early majority is really when it goes at a larger scale. When you look at this group of people that buy, and then you overlap it with the PLC, the product life cycle, is you see again that you have a bell curve. And what I want to show, actually this slide, I prefer to show it first. This slide is saying, if you have a business, you may not try to become a billionaire, but you care for growth. That's what I said earlier. If you care for growth, is you need to have products that are created to replace one another, because you are competing with what you're making and you're trying to make better and better product, and you're competing against your competitors because they are also trying to make something better than you. So when you start, you have one product, which we call P1, and then you have P2, and then P3, and P4. And it's this addition of products as they go from their life to their death, life to death, life to death. Each one is adding to the concept of growth, the total company sales. So this total company sales is what you're looking for, and you're looking for this through the PLC. So now when you look at each one of these products, P1 and then the P2 and each one of them, each one of them go through this cycle. And the cycle is made of 4 groups. The introduction stage is where you will be mostly focused on communicating about the product in order to get these innovators to start buying the product. And then once the early majority starts, this is on the line between market introduction and market growth. These are the early adopters. And then the early adopters to the early majority and to the late majority. And then you get to the maturity stage, which may be much more brief, that is on this graph, or it may be much longer that is on this graph. This graph is just for the sake of showing one graph. Sometimes it can be like a triangle where it is much shorter than this. And sometimes you could almost go from a growth to a death, you know. And sometimes there's product that lasts for a very long time into a maturity where the product is able to sustain its growth. And then you go into the decline stage. The decline stage goes back to a concept that we talked about when we talked about strategies. When we talked about strategy, we talked about two metrics to analyze your product portfolio. And there was one matrix called the BCG matrix, the Boston Consulting Group matrix, which had the star, the dog, the question mark, and the cow. And this concept was saying that you have your product belong to one of these quadrants. And it was not 4 quadrants, but it was 9 if you looked at the GE matrix, the General Electric matrix, which had more quadrants, but it was still the same thing, which was what is the growth of your market, of the market, and what is the market share of the market. So the growth and the market share is very related to each product as it goes through the cycle of growing in the markets where you have a lot of growth, or in a market where you have a high market share. So you could be the only one selling the product and have a high growth. You could be many selling the product and have a high growth because the market is sustaining this growth. So when you look at this, not only it tells you that you have to create new product in order to sustain your growth, but it also tells you what you are supposed to do in terms of focus of your resources for each one of the stages. So in the introduction stage, you focus on getting more people to know, brand awareness. In the growth stage is you try to maximize your market share and grow your profit. So in the second stage, you want to grow your profit because you want to have the maximum profit as possible in the maturity stage. So your profit margin as a percentage may be higher in the growth stage. So because you have less competitors. So maybe you make 50% in the growth stage, but you sell 1,000 products. Versus in the maturity stage, you make 25%, but you sell 100,000 products. So selling more products is because the market has, or the consumer have heard about the product and they believe that they need it. They see the benefit. And at that time, you will maximize your profit and defend your market share because you have many competitors. So you want to attract these consumers as much as possible to your product. The money you're going to spend attracting them is not going to be so much about communicating about the product, telling them what it is, because that's what you would have done in the introduction and the growth stage. It's going to be about creating some discounts, creating some value, creating some price and promotion. And this price and promotion is, 2 for 1 type of thing. And this is what in the maturity you do. So that will reduce your the percentage margin that you will make, but hopefully that will increase the amount of product that you sell and therefore increase your sale and therefore increase your profit, overall profit that you will be making and defending your market share. In the decline stage, obviously there's different level of decline and there's different steepness of decline. It may be a slow decline. And so what you do is going back to the BCG matrix. Here you would have a cash cow. And this cash cow will be still somewhat profitable. So what you try to do is to reduce your expenses as much as possible in order to take advantage of this residual sales that you're getting, and possibly the number of competitors that are leaving early are generating more people to start buying from you, even though it's not growing, there's less and less people buying, but they are still coming towards you because your competitors have left this area, and so that you become more and more specialized for the people that are left. I've discussed a lot of rather complex concepts, and so I want to take advantage to ask you if you have any questions on this. Anyone would want to ask me a question or anything that I could explain again.
Can you explain the decline again, please? Because I'm kind of confused on that part.
So the decline, so let's say let's go back to, so you have like roller skates, and you make roller skates, and you have, there's 100 of other brand that makes roller skates. So you're not alone, but there's millions of people that buy roller skates. And so you're not growing, but you're in your maturity stage, and some brands are doing a little bit better. You're doing good. You're defending your market share. You try to still make some profit. But at that time, is you see that there's a new product coming, it's rollerblades. So instead of having 4 wheels on your skates, it's a blade of wheels. And suddenly people are starting to buy less and less rollerblades and more buying roller skates. And there's people that never use rollerblades that are not really into this. They are just into fitness, and they don't care to be making jumps or do anything acrobatic. They just want to use their bicycle or go rollerblade. They are younger people than they used to. They are a different group of people, and they are buying rollerblades. And in fact, let's say before there was a million people buying rollerblades, and now there's 100,000 people buying, a million people buying rollerblades. Now there's 100,000 people buying roller skates, but this number is going faster and faster, and it's taking away from the roller skates. And now you start selling less and less of these roller skates, but now you don't have 100 competitors anymore. You have 5. So as you have 5 competitors, the deal here is if you have 5 competitors, but that's too many for the people still buying the product, it's getting less and less worth selling roller skates. But in some way, you're banking on the fact that there will always be people buying roller skates because there's a different benefits of roller skates, and you want to be the last standing company selling this product. So there's 5, and there's 4, and there's 3, and then there's 2. And at the moment there's 2, you're actually doing pretty well, because even though now there's not a million people buying roller skates, but there's 125,000. 125,000 divided by 2, this is more than what you used to sell when there was 100 company. So you're actually really benefiting from this. But however, you had to reduce the price of your roller skates because they're seen as a black and white TV of the rollers type of thing, an old product, and it keeps going down, maybe 120, 180,000, but eventually you may become the last one to sell those roller skates, and therefore you will benefit from being the last company. So the decline stage is when you have a product that disappears and it's being used by some others, but there may be a point. So in the case of roller skates, there's still people using and buying roller skates. It's much smaller. I mean, maybe it's 5% roller skates and 95% rollerblade. But if you take the example of an iPhone, I don't think there's anyone buying iPhone 5 anymore, iPhone 6 anymore. So this one has declined, but to the point of disappear. So not every product goes into a decline to disappear, but most products go into a decline to disappear. And so some of the products are still worth selling because there's still some profits to be made. So when you are in the maturity stage, maybe your profit was 20%. When you are in the decline stage, maybe your profit is 12%. but you have less competitors and it costs you less to sell this product because people know about it and they're just buying it from you because you are this last known brand to still do that. Does that answer your question? Is it more clear?
Yes, that was perfect.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? This is a question that will be in the quiz, where I would ask you a question such as, what's the first stage of the product life cycle, or what's the last stage of the product life cycle? That's easy. It's more difficult if I tell you what is the name of the stage where people start looking for newer products, and where you have to defend your market share as a company. So then you have to remember what do you do in each one of the stage, and in that situation, defending your market share is in the maturity stage. And that's where people start looking at newer products. Because think about it, the innovators, when do they start buying the newer product? They start buying the newer product when the product that they were the innovators for are probably in the growth stage, or maybe at the end of the growth stage, or maybe now in the maturity stage. People with interest for a specific category, they don't wait for the product to be in the decline stage to become an innovator. So you could almost say, to simplify, innovators buys the newest product when this product is being purchased by the early adopters. And early adopters start buying the product from the innovators when what they buy is being purchased by the early majority. So this is like a cycle, like an order of when do the product get purchased and who's purchasing them, and therefore the focus, strategic focus for the company to try to gain from the next group of people that are sort of sensitive. This sensitivity comes from the fact that the price of this product tends to be more expensive when those products are in the introduction stage. So when they are in the introduction stage, that's also why innovators tend to be people that have a higher income, because they can afford innovations, right? There's a very, very good logic, sort of a common sense. And that's why a business requires a lot of common sense, understanding cycles, understanding sort of biological change of how the product gets recycled. And it's very interesting because sometimes product get revived and sometimes product lasts sort of forever. Tic Tac belongs to the same company as Kinder Surprise and as Nutella. These three products are made by this company from Italy, whose name escaped me, Ferrero. It's made by Ferrero. And so they have been very good. I mean, it's a company that makes more than $100 billion. It's huge. Very successful at creating new products and also at keeping these new products into the maturity stage. So they make some improvements, but when you think about it, these products have a very, I mean, it's sort of a design that you could say it's from the 80s or 90s. It's older than that, and it keeps on sort of being revised, but not too much. Mr. Clean is an old brand that come up with new products, but still using the same concept. Barbie doll, they've evolved, but there is a core of the product that stays, and then the Porsche 911 is the same thing, where it has evolved, but through this evolution, the core of the product has stayed the same. And so some products go up and down very quick, and because maybe they are a fade, but some products have a much longer life. Obviously, as a marketer, is you hope for the longer life, but that's very the most uncommon way. Most of the time, it has a cycle. Here's a friend of mine. His name is Lou Smith. Lou Smith is just an amazing guy. His website is louready.com. he used to be a professional football player. He played for 4 teams: Buffalo, the Rams, and 2 other teams, Kentucky something, and all this, as a professional. What's quite amazing about him, for the little that I know about football, is he was actually drafted, and so that's a big honor. And he was a, what was it? It was cornerback or something. And he is, as you see the picture here, he's actually in his 60s. One thing that he does is he doesn't eat any meat. He's a vegetarian and he has his own health. He's also a cancer survivor. I mean, this man could have died so many times from all the things that he did that were crazy, and eventually decided to go into this, these good habits. He has a very regimented life in terms of the exercise and how he spends his time, and how he cares for the community. He had his own kids, and after his kids became adults, he decided to foster and adopt other kids. So he's quite remarkable. He's a very good friend of mine. He lives in Orange County, and he's a coach in various places in LA and Orange County. He's very successful with celebrities. He's very humble, and every time I meet with him, he has a very extreme diet. When you invite him for dinner, you have to cook a lot of broccoli and all that. So he's in himself someone, I think, has a lot of opportunities, because he talks about a world that is becoming more of a common field to be vegetarian and doing the type of things that he does. And obviously his health is quite remarkable. And he was picked up by Jackie Chan and Arnold Schwarzenegger in their latest documentary called The Game Changers. So this documentary came in October, and there are multiple athletes, Olympic winners, world famous people that have come from behind the curtains and are actually saying, yes, I don't eat meat, and I feel so much better in terms of health since I've not been eating meat, because there is a big industry behind the meat, and I want you to eat meat. And there's another thing which has to do with the way animals are being treated, and the industry, the way the industry is pushing for the production of animals and so forth. So with Lou, we have had 100 times this discussion with him, and seeing how he eats and seeing what he says, which is very true. This is a quote from him, but he's not someone you want to go to the gym with, because everyone looks bad next to Lou, essentially. And I say anyone. You take the most famous sports people that are 25 years old, and when they go train with Lou, they give up before Lou gives up. And oftentimes he says it's because of his lifestyle, his diet. Most guys my age can't keep up with their grandchildren. My grandchildren can't keep up with me, and that's true. And he's got some very athletic grandchildren. So this, I would like to show you this video very quick. Why I bring this is because when I was discussing with Lou, it's like, what could I do? Is I say, well, you're gonna have to come up with a new product. So you have to talk to people, tell them, find a group of people like you that want to get people to know about this discovery that you made, that you can actually be an athlete, and then talk to all these athletes. And it took him a while to be able to connect with all of these people, and they realized that there was some sort of conspiracy against talking about this, and everybody was sort of uncomfortable. And then they created this Game Changers, and maybe some of you have seen it because it's very popular on YouTube and Netflix as a documentary. So this was the new product ID for my friend Lou, and now he's coaching so many celebrities in Los Angeles because they hear their friends talking about it. So it's a little movement that is created, and right now it's a movement that is not in the majority. It's through the innovators yet. So the innovators are all jumping in, talking about this style of diet and looking at what these people do and the lifestyle that they have. And it's quite fascinating. So when you develop a new product, yes.
You also have to be careful with like the arguments they have in the movie, because like some of them are like very vague and are not like they say it's like, because I'd already did some research about that and I tried it out myself.
Okay.
And I talked to some nutritionists, and like they say that some of their arguments are very vague and like not scientifically proven, and if you look at their sources, they're like not everything, but some is like very just vague and not very strong.
Yes. Well, I think what's dangerous is the extreme. And so I personally, since I'm aware of this information, I use my common sense. And my common sense has been, it makes sense. The more meat you eat, probably the worse I personally feel. So going all the way to do what Lou does, maybe it works for Lou. And that's maybe the situation is not, there's not a diet that works for everyone. And so it's a question of understanding and learning the information. And I think you should be careful, because a lot of people think that what learning is about is acquiring knowledge. I think learning is about becoming something. And here's the same thing: is you get this information about all of these diets, all of these lifestyle, how to stay younger, how to stay stronger, how to stay healthier. And at the end is there's always a new book, a new diet. But at the end, most people can read all of these books, but I think what makes you not look good or feel bad is bad habits. And essentially everybody sort of know what is bad habits, but it takes the strength. And it's okay to get healthy and look like Lou for a month, but then it's the thing of doing it again and again and again and again. I mean, I remember going to very expensive restaurants, very expensive restaurants with Lou. And to be honest, like we were like 10 people, there was 9 people ordering filet mignon, because you're in a very nice, expensive restaurant. This is the time to get filet mignon. And so we had filet mignon, and I remember Lou looking at us and saying, no, I don't want it, and all this. And Lou had broccoli and mushroom. And I think it takes a lot of strength to stick to that. And at the same time, it's possible that it works for him, but I think it's everything in moderation and understanding who you are and what you should have. And we are not equal in front of food, and we all react differently. So looking at research to find solution is better, but thinking that all the solutions are in research, it's also not good, because then it would give too much value to science, and science is only true until it's been disproven, because science is also evolving all the time. And so what we know to be true today by science, maybe tomorrow change, because the science makes a new innovation that makes an adjustment to what we used to know. So I think the more you know, the less you believe, but at the same time, the more you know, the more you can use this in making better decisions. And so this is called epistemology. Epistemology is believing in knowledge for the sake of acquiring knowledge in order to change your opinion and having a better understanding of your world. And so to me, science is that way. Science is not a law that dictates exactly what you should do today, which will be the same that it would be in 100 years. I think science evolves, and I think technology has a huge impact on science. So it's a long answer I give you for this particular situation, but I think that is the humble way you should look at your environment when you run a business, because your environment changes. And if you are successful, I think it's when you are the most vulnerable, because this success makes you believe that you are made of steel because you have succeeded. But what is very difficult is to have continuous success. You know, I mean, I think about a company right now such as Sony. I mean, Sony was the brand that everybody wanted. Everybody wanted Sony at one time, and now they would rather have Apple before they have Sony. So the world has changed, and so success is something that is very temporary, and you have to work very hard to keep going. And it's this understanding of these changes. So anyone who has anything to add?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
It might be a little off topic of what we're talking about right now, but
That's
when
okay.
you're creating a product, should you worry about which country you produce the product in?
I personally, I do. I think I came to the US in 2000, and when I came in the US, I was very involved in consulting from the get-go. And every consulting project that I was working on was designed in America, was managed in America, was meant to be selling something in America. And every time these products were outsourced in terms of production to Asia most of the time. And I was telling people, if you outsource everything to Asia, is you creating a short-term success for you, but you're creating a long-term issue for your economy, because eventually you're going to lose the knowledge of production, and you're going to pass this knowledge of production to some other country. And one day you may be into a situation where you want to keep the knowledge of making this product, because the world will change. It doesn't stay the same. And so I remember people making fun of me, saying that I was being too European, or I was being too French. And so I remember specifically this project I was making plush toys. So they were like teddy bears and dolls made of plush and material and foam and textile. And I couldn't find anyone in the US to do it, because all the machines had been purchased by South America, the American machines, or by Asia. And most of the engineering were done in other countries like Singapore or the Philippines or Indonesia or India. And most of the production was either done in Vietnam or it was done in China. And I felt that this was a very short-term orientation. So I think when you make products, you have to think about what you do and how it's going to impact your environment. And obviously, there's always this dilemma, but what if I'm the only one to think this way? I'm going to lose. What if the consumer don't think this way? So that's what's very difficult. Should it be the consumer that dictates when you should start worrying about where you make the product? Or should it be you as a leader making the decision because you believe that even though people are not realizing right now, this is a principle that you're going to have? It is very difficult because it depends on your resources. And in my situation, when I started making the cognac, I use the packaging all the packaging was made outside of France. And then I was having a lot of problems for the packaging made outside of France. And also I was feeling that this was wrong because I was not serving the consumer very well. When people buy cognac, they expect it to be from France. The cognac has to be from France. But I thought it would be making sense too that the packaging would be made from France, or at least from a country around France or in Europe or something like this. It took a lot of argumentation for my dad to agree to that because the prices were 3 times more expensive. But at the end, we had so many problems with importation, custom delays, and all of this that we started missing some good sales opportunity. We started upsetting some buyers because of the delay, that I convinced my dad one time to start making things in France and then also in Spain. And the price was becoming better because the more work we were giving these people, the cheaper they became. And eventually I found the situation that there was no more motivation for me to make this product far away. And it was much better off to make this product. And then I started looking at making this product using more recyclable products, and all started making sense. But the reality, which is sort of sad, is this is a trend that started a long time ago, but the people have not put their money where their mouth is. And it's only recently that I've seen the trend where people are saying, I want to buy things that are environmentally friendly and all of this, and they're actually really doing it. There was a lot of time where they would say that, but not doing it. And so looking for where you make the product, I think is very important. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
So yes, and I hope this is something your generation will be more keen on, because it's not ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is when you believe everything is made in your country is better. I don't think it's ethnocentrism. It is not not thinking the other people don't know what they're doing. It is possibly a sort of protectionism, but I think what it is some sort of spread. I call this spreading your love. Spreading your love is when you really ask people in California to work hard so they are better than people in Arizona, and people in Arizona to work hard so they are better than in Florida. And at the end, everyone should try to work hard for the sake of being better at what they do, where they're doing it, and then let the consumer decide what do they want to buy based on everyone doing the best they can in order to produce the best product that they can. And it's a healthy competition based on keeping all of these differences, but at the same time embracing the fact that we are obviously a very global world where it's great to have the possibility to buy products from everywhere, but having these products where they are made really representative of where they are made. One of my focus of research is luxury, and a lot of the luxury products are made either in France or in Italy or in Germany or in England. These four countries are very much representative of where those products are made. As well in the United States, but oftentimes in the United States is a lower level of luxury. So it's like comparing Coach and Louis Vuitton, if you want. So unfortunately, because of the greed for gain, there's a lot of products from France which are actually using some elements of production overseas in order to save, or they're buying some of the parts from overseas and just assembling them in France. I think this is really despicable. And sometimes this is done in order to save for the sake of the production of the product, but sometimes it's also because there's a lot of pollution being created when you make products. And sometimes what you do is you offshore the production of these products. That way the pollution can be done somewhere else. And then you can import this product that have been made in a very high human cost and a pollution cost at a much cheaper price to then assemble them in France. So now I'm talking down about France, but then people buying them believing they come from France, and when in fact there's a percentage, I would say, of the overall product that comes from France, but it's not 100% that is coming from France. So that's why personally, at my own level, I started deciding that things had to be produced in France. So I would produce the glass bottle in France, the labels in France, the paper, the capsules, the cardboards, the wood, the packaging, and all this would be from France. At my own level, I think that's important. Any other question? Okay, so when you talk about creating a new product, you have to think about the process of creating it. And there's several things I want to talk about the process. First, I want to talk about the fact that you're going to have people involved in these processes. And so there's two schools of thoughts when it comes to the organizing the groups to be involved in these processes. There's the sequential and the simultaneous. So the sequential means that you identify 4 steps. So it could be 5, it could be 3, a number of steps. And what you do is you create different teams for each one of the steps. But each one of those teams are based on their expertise on the step. So let's say step 1 is a step that requires a lot of marketing research. So step 1 is going to have 5 marketing research people. Step 2 is going to have to do with this production and engineering. So you're going to have step 2 with all the production and engineering people. Then step 3 is going to be an analysis of the consumers and some kind of financial analysis. And you're going to have marketing people, accounting people in the step 3, and then step 4 and so forth. That's where you have people of the same kind in each one of the steps. A much better way is to create multiple steps and have people representative of multiple functions in each one of these steps. Why simultaneous or called team-based is better is because you will have a more a broader view in each one of the steps, because they will know the impact of the steps that they're working on and how is this step is going to be embedded or impacting the next process, the next step. So team-based is better, but team-based usually takes more time. And team-based require more resources. So between these two, it's more common to see a team-based for a larger company. But if you're a smaller companies, you want to understand the incidence of having people from different origins inside each one of these processes. Also, the sequential is a little easier, because what you may have sometimes is in a small business is where you have 3 people involved in the sequential, and those 3 people are going to be sharing the 3 steps. Person 1 has process 1, and they will have all the functions required for process 1, and they won't share the processes. They will be specifically looking at the processes that they're working on. So smaller businesses, more traditional businesses will use sequential, and more modern businesses will use, or larger businesses will use simultaneous. So now, what are the different steps and stages? So this is something that you need to learn, is there are 8 stages in the product development. So when we go back to my slide that talks about the strategy of new product development, and this was 5 weeks ago, and I was telling you, maybe 6 weeks ago, product development is one of the most complicated strategy because it has a lot of steps. And I said later you will understand. So this is the later. What do you mean by lots of steps? Well, it has 8 steps. The first steps is to come up with an idea. So come up with an opportunity, if you want to define it as well. So you have these opportunities that convert into an idea, or you have these ideas which are supported by opportunity. Remember, you need to have some opportunity there. Then you go into actually looking at all these ideas that you've identified, and you start screening them, which means that you may have found too many. And this is what's very important when you create a new product, or when you're trying to grow your company and you create new products, you cannot be stubborn in looking at one idea. So how many ideas should we have? The more, the better. You have 6 people in your team, you should have 6 ideas, minimum. Could we have 12? Means each one of us come up with 2. Yes. Could we have 18 and so forth? Yes. The more idea, the better. So this is why brainstorming is very important. The flow of idea. Why is this important? Because in idea generation, you don't worry about the quality of your idea. Is you separate the 2 stages, which is 1, produce as much as you can. The quantity matters. Then idea screening, the second stage, is the quality matters. So you want to dissociate them because you don't want to minimize the idea generation stage. I just know, having done this since the early 90s and been teaching since 95, that 97% of the projects of the students, when they do new product development, they come up with 5 or 6 ideas. In fact, in your report that you're working on, I'm asking you to come up with 4 strategies based on a bunch of opportunities. I say 4 because that should be the minimum, but the reality is 4 is very, very little, but I've kept it to 4 so that way you're learning and it's better than 1. Most of the time, businesses, when they create a new product, they've very much only contemplate one or two or three because they have limited themselves. Why they limited themselves is because they don't know how to very well generate ideas. The screening is much easier. The screening is, it's based on our resources. It's based on the size and forecasts of the potential for these screening IDs. So the more and the crazier, the better. But all of this is going to be filtered through the screen. Then you may be developing some concepts. So the concept may be just a 3D visual. It doesn't have to be a full existing concept. Maybe it's a script that explains what the product's going to do. And then you start testing these. Then you develop your marketing strategy where you will define who's the target. Then you'll do the business analysis that will really look at the resources that are required, who does what, create a schedule, looks at the production and the budgets, the type of scenario in terms of the introduction, growth, maturity, and decline, and see how much money we're going to be making, what will be the price, and so forth. Then you develop the product, and then you should test this new product. You should test it, and you test it in various ways, and I'm going to discuss that. And then you launch the product at a larger scale. So this slide is the same thing, but it goes into all the detail that I just explained. What it really says is that if from one, it doesn't work, it gets rejected. And then in two, if it works, it moves in three. But if it doesn't, what doesn't work in two gets rejected. What doesn't work in three gets rejected. So it gets rejected. It's only in some areas, it could be within some of the other one, but let's say in number 7, for example, when you can reject an idea where you can make some adjustments and then retest and then readjust and then retest and readjust until you can actually commercialize the product. So where do you find new products? You can look at what your competitors are doing. Maybe they're working on something new and you want to learn from what they are doing. You can talk to people who are salespeople. They work with customers and customers are telling them. You talk to the producers, the engineers, and maybe they've identified some changes that could be brought. So remember, you don't want to develop a product based on what an engineer says. This is just for the ID generation stage. You don't, with all of the information, you generate IDs. Then the IDs have to be supported by the opportunities. And that's really what you do in the screening. You can do surveys, you can observe people, you can do focus groups, you can read comments, you can read industry reports, you can go to trade shows, and while you are at trade shows, you observe all of the innovation, and maybe that gives you an idea of your own innovation based on what you've seen. So it's sort of and it's very inspired by what you've seen, or maybe you've seen an innovation and you think about improving on that innovation, thinking it's great, but it didn't go exactly the way you would have brought up that solution. And then so you innovate from having it seen and improve right away from it. Maybe your employees have some idea besides your salespeople, or you create some kind of innovation connection with your customers, where maybe you have a club and then you mix with your fans, and then your fans will be auto-generating some suggestions. So this auto-generating is becoming very good through the social media, where people are participating. People are participating so much that there are some that those influencers or the biggest fan of your brand will eventually give you some ideas. And so social media is great because it gives you a window to the world, and it gives you the opportunity to let them participate. And so that helps a lot. That's a benefit of social media. But now, how do you screen? You screen based on the possibility of doing it. I mean, is it technically feasible? The likelihood that you will be able to make those changes and it's going to be commercially viable. And then the likelihood of this to be something that the customer wants. So do the customer want it? Yes or no? can we make it? Yes or no? Do we have the resources to launch it? Do we have the production, the investment to go all the way? I mean, you may not have the investment, but you may find this such a great idea that you will look for some way to find the investment afterwards. So you don't give up on great ideas based on the fact that you don't have the resources. But you have to think about the reality, and how realistic it is to pursue some of these new ideas based on the resources that you have. So, I mean, if it's suddenly hundreds and hundreds of times more resources that you have, maybe that's too much for right now. Then you develop the product, then you test the product, then you make some modification, and then you go into the marketing strategies where you develop the STP, the distribution, and then also some kind of objectives for the company to go after. Okay, so how do you test? There's 3 tests that you can do in the market. But before I go in the test, maybe I should ask you again if you have any questions. No, okay, so the test is not, the rest is maybe a little bit more complicated what I explained, but this is simple. There's 3 tests. So you do a full launch in a representative city. And I mentioned that to you before, where I actually launched a new product, and I did it through Facebook, and I had a huge success. That was in February. I only did it in Houston, Texas. So I was very focused on Houston, Texas, and I launched this new cognac just in Houston, Texas. Why is this? It's because I wanted to see if it would work. So instead of launching it everywhere in the world, everywhere in the USA, I just launched it in Houston, Texas. And that's one way. Another way is launch it only in one store. So then you could say, you know, I launch it in, say, Vance in California, or Vance everywhere in America, just that store. So it's controlled of that store. And then you could have a simulated test market, which is done as an experiment. So you doing it in an environment that is like a lab where you see what how people respond. So you rent or you create a fake environment. So you can create a fake online website where people go and they pretend that they're buying, or you rent some kind of supermarket for a period of time, and you have hundreds of people that go into the supermarket and they pretend to shop, and you give them a survey before they shop, when you give them a survey after they shop, and then you video them all the time, those 100 people, and you see how they proceed through the store and what choices they made and so forth. So these are not real customers. They're paid to act as customers. It's a lab environment. The problem with this, well, the advantage with this is it's really quick. I mean, you could get this done from 9 p.m. till 12 p.m. So, and then you will have the data the day after, or a lot of the data the day after. So it's really quick. The disadvantage is these are not real customers. This is still a lab environment. It's a simulation. So pros and cons compared to the other one. Obviously, the standard and the test market is very recommended, but it all depends on the risk and launching this new product and the amount of resources that you have. But you would want to do some level of testing before you launch the full product. So again, there are 8 stages. As you see in Canvas, I've uploaded a number of things in Canvas based on today's date. So you have the summary of the new product development, and you have some quiz question. And the typical quiz question will be, what is the name of the stage between concept development and business analysis? A, is it ID screening? B, ID generation? C, commercialization? D, test marketing or marketing strategy? E. And so then you know what they are, and then you are able to identify which one it